Poll question today: is Quinn Hughes having the greatest season in Canucks history? We will put it to our next guest, Patrick Johnston of the Province and Post Media, who joins us Thursdays. Hello.
Hi. How we doing?
Very well.
Just another day covering the top of the
juggernaut.
conference.
Yeah, exactly. The first place Vancouver Canucks.
Answer our poll question for today. Are you tired of the winning?
So much winning.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, the joke used to be it's never boring in Canuckland. Are things boring, or is this what we're saying? Like,
to be honest, that's the thing, is that they are a very dramatic team. Like last night was a crazy game. Like it was like a goal line sweep. I mean, that was a fun night at the rink, which they are also providing in addition to wins.
Yeah. Well, yeah, winning cures all, and the team's having a fun time. They obviously, as you guys mentioned, Quinn Hughes is having this incredible season, and he's won. There's 3 Canucks tied for scoring in the NHL scoring league. Like, that's never happened. Like, what is going on? Quinn Hughes certainly is on track to have the most remarkable season in Canucks history. You can go to Bure, you can go to pick a Sedin. Marcus Naslin's forgotten should have been MVP season is in the mix, right? Like, because that season was so dominant, and so it wasn't out of nowhere, but it was such a confirmation of what I think people always thought he could be.
You're talking 02-03, the 104.48 goal year in the dead puck era, right?
Yeah,
so
dead puck.
Mm-hmm.
There is an argument he was the best player in the world that season. Like,
I think that's right.
You think about him, the ability to come down on the wing and nail the wrist shot that you needed for a goal. It was a stunning season.
Because goals from distance had started drawing up at that point.
Well, that's it, and you couldn't. A guy like that shouldn't have been able to get loose. Like just the defenseman being allowed to simply grab you. People forget what hockey was like 20 years ago, and that's what made those Canucks so thrilling as well. Was that they played very similar to what this team's trying to do, very up tempo. Making your defense essentially your offense, right? And that is what Quinn Hughes is doing. That is the incredible thing, is that the thing that him and like Hronek, when they've been playing together, the reason why they've been so dominant is they never have to play defense. And so Quinn Hughes, for that reason, because it's the Bobby Orr comparisons are starting to flow now. That is why it could very well be the most remarkable season in Canucks history.
I remember McCarr's breakout year, watching tape from Colorado, going, "That's just incredible." He's there, and we saw it in Spurs. Like, we've seen everything that Quinn Hughes has done this season. We have seen him do, but he's just doing more of it, and it's remarkable because it's a lot of work to do what he's doing. It's remarkable that he's able to pull it off for 60 minutes, playing as dynamically as the only guy that I can compare seeing in the last 30 years being this dynamic on the blue line is McCarr, honestly, and now Hughes is right there.
Yeah, you look at all the things he's doing. You look at how much he's making his teammates better. I mean, there is this story on sort of how good a season JT Miller's having. A huge part of how well JT Miller's playing is because he's with Quinn Hughes. Like he's having a strong season. We know he can do stuff with the puck, but the fact that he is playing with the guy that's having this incredible year is a huge factor. And I had a great chat with JT about it yesterday, and a story going up today at the Province about that very factor. He's having such a good season that like everybody is benefiting. It's flowing to everyone. And you're right, like the McCarr comparison is correct, and then beyond that, there is no comparison because it is such a new era of hockey. That's the other thing. Here's a little guy who never would have been drafted where he was drafted, and he still fell because people were like, "Oh, is he too small?" And nobody cares now how tall he is. It is absolutely astounding how well he's playing. I mean, I remember thinking from the very beginning, you think of that button hook he can do all the time at the, by the blue line. He gets himself, not even that he's in trouble, but he creates extra space for himself just because he's so agile.
Matt Martin coming out to meet him last night. Matt Martin coming out to meet him at the blue line a couple of times last night. Poor Matt Martin. Sorry, you are not catching him.
And it's just, he is a player of the like, other than perhaps Bure, and in a way the Sedins that we just have not seen. He changes the game around him every night. It is just absolutely amazing to watch.
It's mesmerizing.
Yeah.
We were sitting here the other day, and this one says to me, "Gosh, don't you love all these new storylines?" Did you feel like we were sort of in a vacuum of storylines for, I don't know, however many years you've been covering the Canucks, Patrick? Because it was effectively all symptoms of the same disease.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's symptoms of the same disease. I mean, Groundhog Day is the kind way putting symptoms of the same disease. I mean, throwing the no plan. It was just endlessly, oh, maybe this collection will work. There's no particular rhyme or reason, but we like this guy and that guy. And, Ian Cole's made a difference. Pia Suter didn't play last night, but he's made a difference. Teddy Bluger looks like he's going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
It is so much more interesting. I mean, there's just things to write. Why people are succeeding, why things are going well, is so much more engaging to write about. And there are so many different things to go at right now. I mean, obviously we can talk about the fact that their shooting percentage is still, it's not as high as it was. The regression's slowly happening, but they won a 1-goal game last night, which is what I said last week. They're just gonna have to, the games are going to start getting tighter, and now it comes down to how can they pull it together. And that was the thing about the win last night, was that was exactly that kind of win. They got a ton of shots, but they kept at it, and they found the goals they needed, and that it is just so much more compelling to cover a team like this.
Not often can you say you've got a cushion for severe regression, but when you're winning games by 3 goals through a dozen games, you can trim off 2 per night, and you still have a good chance to win.
Well, you're 9 points up on the last.
Well, that's from the wins and loss department. I mean, just from a single solitary game, that shooting percentage can come way down, and you still have a chance to score 4 goals.
Well, and you look at, just look who they're going to play. They're playing the Flames tonight, but even after this, they play the Kraken twice. They play the Sharks twice. They play the Flames again. They play the Ducks. Like, there are obviously a couple tough opponents in Colorado and Vegas, and obviously Anaheim is having an interesting start to the season, and the Kraken are, I don't think we're ever going to be quite as good as they sort of managed to be last year, but they're going to be a tough opponent. But the Canucks match up so well against all these teams. You can really finally say that, even if you're looking at an injury. Obviously, losing Carson Soucy is an issue, because he has been an important addition to this team in terms of as a depth defenseman. That is going to test them. That the tests are now here. I mean, we'll see what happens with Kuzmenko. I guess did post on Instagram that he's feeling fine, so that's good. But that was a reminder of how things could be. You lose Soucy and Kuzmenko, in the span of 2 days. If that had happened, that you are going to have to start seeing what you can do. I mean, that goes back to the original quote that we all love from Jim Rutherford, that if everything goes right, well, so far everything has gone right. And at some point it is going to turn on them a little bit. It may not be extreme, but they may have to deal with a big bump, like losing one of their top forwards. And how they manage through that is going to be the question here. It is obviously the opposition matters, but it comes down to how you are built and what you are able to do with it. And the Canucks have been doing a great job.
So you can answer, or you can argue this in both ways. You have a little bit of adversity here. You have an absence for a couple of months. You either say, hey, we've got a bit of cushion, all that regression that we talked about, that regression cushion that we talked about. You've got that in your favor. Do you just try to coast through it all and try to, or do you say, we're not giving up this momentum? We can't afford to give up this momentum. We are rolling like thunder right now. Let's plug the hole. Which is more true, do you think? Which is more likely?
Plug the hole in terms of like roster additions, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that is the most likely. I think you are now at a position, you've set yourself up that it's going to be awfully hard not to make the playoffs from here. And so now you have to start saying, okay, what does this team need? What else can we put on this team? How do we make that happen? I mean, I think I mentioned last week, you look at the easy one, which is Anthony Beauvillier becomes a San Jose Shark, and then you have $4 million of cap space to work with. But you start thinking even more, okay, who do we want? What kind of winger would we like to find? Obviously, we know that there's interest in defensemen. And you're looking at the ways you can push the guys that are in the lineup right now down a little bit. I mean, Phil DiGiuseppe is a great story and has done very well on that line, but can you get a guy that's better than that does what he does better? Can you start adding pieces, because you're going to need the depth anyway, like injuries are going to happen. That's where you're at. And I think you have to think about that carefully, because the other thing is, you're going to match up probably. I mean, we talked about this last week, but you're probably going to match up against LA, maybe a matchup against Edmonton. One of those teams is going to be a tough team in the playoffs. And how do you feel about your chances with that? How do you feel about if you do win a first round? How do you feel about your second round against, say, Vegas? You have to start thinking about how you match up against those teams and what you don't have and what you need to have a better chance of winning. And that's where you're at. Might as well get going on that as fast as you can.
What do you think? Do you think they're going to land one of these Calgary defensemen, or do you think it's just a lot of smoke?
Well, I mean, they certainly, I made the joking tweet in the summer, and maybe I should have been clear about it, but like the fact they were interested in, quote, tall defensemen. I mean, they certainly were looking at Soucy was their priority, but I think they've been interested in Zadorov since before the draft, at least. A tall, tough defenseman who can play. Like, I think we're seeing in Soucy, what we've seen from him is why they liked him. Like, he's not a top pairing offensive quality defenseman, but he's a guy who knows he can see where to make the pinch. Ian Cole's talked about making the offensive zone smaller, like getting up, going up, having those smart instincts, understanding where to position yourself. Zadorov is of that type. Like, the guy scored double digits last year. Like, so sure. And then of course Tanev, I mean, the fit is obvious, and I think the player's interest in the place he's always wanted to be is obvious. I can understand why Calgary just does not want to do a deal with Vancouver. So does that mean Vancouver goes and finds someone back east to trade for one of these guys and then turn around? I don't know how the politics in the league would work that way, but maybe that's something that happens. That type of player is certainly what they're going to be looking for. Whether it's exactly those two, I'm not sure.
Höglander is not enough, though.
No, I think you're seeing enough from Höglander that, like, there's a useful part there, but it's not a guy that you say we have to keep him. You just want to say this is a play. But no, I mean, Höglander on his own is not going to make something like that work, I don't think. But I think it also depends on who you're working with, right? Like what can they do on the other side? Because there's not a lot. That's the other thing to remember, is that there's not a lot of cap space in the system. And so you're working with teams. I mean, that is one of the appeals of Höglander, is that he is relatively expensive, but whether he's any more than sort of a fourth line energy guy remains to be seen. And that's certainly something that I think Rick Tocchet keeps highlighting, because that's why he's a guy that's on the bubble of the roster right now.
What do you make of the fact that they're back talking with Petey's representatives?
I think it's interesting because I poked around on this, and obviously, I mean, there wouldn't be noise if there wasn't anything there. I come back to the point I think we've always made, which is that Pettersson himself laid out the sort of standard. Is this team winning? Does this team look like it's going somewhere? Balanced out with what is it like to play here? What are the circumstances around the team? In every sense. and the vibes are good, right? Like, I can see why he'd be like, okay, I want, if we can keep this going, this is certainly how we want to do. I think it also now comes down to getting more clarity on what the cap's going to look like. How much more wiggle room is there next year? Because will have to start managing the OEL buyout next year. If we're talking about a 4-year term, which I think people are throwing around, well, I mean, that's 3 of those 4 years you're going to have substantial OEL cap penalties to manage your way through. So what does it look like? What number? You want to keep the player. Then it becomes the player. How much can I ask for? And how can we kind of find our way through that? But certainly the way they're playing, the way they're winning, the way Rick Tocchet clearly connects with his players. I mean, the thing that forever blows my mind is how much of a player is this coach. This guy clearly is. The fact that this guy's the first guy on the ice, not because he's making some statement, but because he simply loves hockey and he loves coaching and he loves working with these players. That the sort of passion and energy is so obvious from this guy. And if you're playing for him, I think you're going to want to love playing for him. I mean, every guy, you hear all the good stories. Guys like playing for him in Arizona. Yeah, if you're Elias Pettersson, you've had this guy almost for a whole year, and you're going, okay, I think I actually believe in this stuff. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that the conversation is even if it's quiet, has restarted.
Good stuff. We'll catch up next Thursday.
Probably
Take care, guys.
wins from now. A few wins from now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk to you when they're 15-2-1.
3-1.
3-1.
Every week, Chappie asks me, we have a little thing for our website, and he asked me, all right, how many wins again? Chappie picked 5 wins this week. He said they were just going to sweep
Everything.
Like,
You never know.
so yeah,
You
we'll
never
talk
know.
to you next week in the undefeated Canucks.
Yeah.
Happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day, Yellow Dog's Chase My Tail Pale Ale.